Inside a certain community market, there were 3 food carts parked in a row. Each cart belonged to a beautiful young female vendor. All 3 of them had been selling their food in this community market for quite some time, and their businesses were doing very well because they had appealing selling points. Combined with their lively selling styles and their eye-catching outfits and makeup, they drew attention wherever they went, making people turn their heads to look back at them. And once customers had a chance to taste the food they prepared, it was clear that their cooking skills were far from ordinary. Anyone who bought food from them would become hooked and return again and again, eventually turning into regular customers. This was especially true for handsome male customers. The 3 women would compete to show off and win their favor, sometimes even cutting the line to prepare food for the good-looking men first. As for beautiful women, or older men who were not particularly attractive, those customers would have to wait and be served later. The 3 beautiful vendors were named Laura, Lorie, and Jenny. Laura sold papaya salad and grilled chicken, along with many other Asian-style dishes. As for Lorie, she sold all kinds of spicy salads. Jenny, on the other hand, sold grilled meatballs with an extra spicy dipping sauce. All 3 of them stood out because of the way they dressed. Laura wore a Sailor Moon outfit. Lorie dressed like a Japanese schoolgirl, complete with a short skirt. Jenny wore traditional chongkrabon pants, with a shawl draped casually over her shoulders, and with all of them enhancing their busts as well. They attracted even more attention than before. The 3 women clearly enjoyed selling their food, especially when the customers were handsome men. They loved greeting them, striking up playful conversations. Sometimes they even turned on music and danced along, all to catch the attention of those good-looking customers. Every single day, their sales were excellent. They sold out completely, without fail. Once everything was gone, they would push their carts back to their rented rooms at the end of a small alley. The place was quite a distance from the market, and many times, as they made their way back, the 3 of them would grumble and complain under their breath, talking about how exhausting the walk was, and how long it took before they finally reached their rooms. But no matter how much they complained, they still refused to move out. The rental rooms at the very end of the alley, owned by an elderly grandpa and grandma, were incredibly cheap, and on top of that, both of them were the landlords themselves. They were kind, warm-hearted people, and they never held anything against the 3 women at all, no matter how they behaved. No matter how loud and excited they got whenever they spotted a handsome man, the elderly couple never minded at all. And most importantly, the rental rooms at the end of the alley were quiet and peaceful, with hardly any people passing through or gathering around. This made their time resting and living there, comfortable, peaceful, and genuinely happy. In the end, the 3 of them had no reason at all to move out of the rented rooms owned by the elderly couple. All they ever did was complain and chatter foolishly from day to day, and that was all there was to it. Until one day, the elderly grandpa and grandma who owned the rental rooms began to notice something strange. They still hadn't seen the 3 women head out to sell their food at the market. The carts were still parked right where they were, just as usual. That made the old couple feel very puzzled and uneasy, but they thought that perhaps the 3 women had simply taken a break from selling and wanted some rest, so they didn't go in to check on the rooms at first. However, as night approached, the rental rooms of the 3 women remained completely silent. That was when the old couple began to feel that something was wrong. They decided to walk over and check. They knocked on the doors and called out the names of all 3 women. Inside the rental rooms, there was no response at all, complete silence. The old man then decided to call his grandson and asked him to come over right away, so that he could break the door open and go inside to see what was going on. When the grandson arrived, and when the door was forced open, everyone froze in shock, utterly horrified by what they saw, because inside the rental room, all 3 women were lying there, soaked in pools of blood. The smell of blood filled the entire room. The grandmother had to rush back outside immediately and vomited violently, emptying her stomach completely. As for the grandfather, he walked around the room, carefully looking at everything. That was when he noticed one window standing open, and the room itself was in complete disarray, with belongings scattered everywhere. He then told his grandson and the grandmother that he suspected thieves had broken in and robbed the 3 young women. After all, the 3 of them had quite a bit of money saved up, and on top of that, they were obsessed with handsome men. They might have invited some men over to the room, only for those men to turn out to be robbers instead. The 3 women probably resisted, and in the end, they were murdered. After that, the grandfather and grandmother contacted the relatives of all 3 women, who lived in other provinces, and asked them to come and take the bodies back home. Once everything had been dealt with, and all matters were finally over, the food carts that had been parked in front of the rental rooms were loaded onto trucks and taken away by the relatives, every single one of them. The grandfather and his grandson worked together to clean the rental rooms thoroughly and repaint them until the place looked livable and pleasant once again. Luckily for the old couple, the house was located a fair distance away from other homes, and it sat at the very end of the alley as well. When the relatives came to collect the body, the grandfather had already spoken to them by phone, asking that everything be done quietly. He wanted to keep things discreet, so that the rental rooms would still be able to find new tenants in the future. Because of that, no one in the area ever knew that 3 women had been murdered inside those rental rooms. Whenever people asked about the 3 young women, wondering why they no longer showed up to sell food at the market, the grandfather and grandmother would simply say that they had returned to their hometowns in the provinces. Before long, the story of the 3 young women from the market slowly faded away. No one talked about them anymore. No one seemed to care. But the grandfather and grandmother, they often startled awake in the middle of the night, unable to sleep peacefully. And not long after the 3 young women had died, whenever night fell, the old couple would often hear high-pitched squeals and shrieks, just like the sounds the women used to make when they were still alive. They could also hear voices chatting, teasing, and joking with one another, exactly the same way they always had before. The grandfather and grandmother were deeply troubled, unsure of what they should do next. Not long after that, someone contacted them asking to rent the rooms. All the old couple could do was silently pray that everything would remain calm and uneventful. The following day, 2 young women moved in as new tenants. On the very first night, as the 2 newcomers settled into the rooms, the grandfather and grandmother sat watching the rental rooms, feeling uneasy and unsettled. And that first night, those 2 new women were being watched. The spirits of the 3 women who had died stood quietly, staring at them, their eyes filled with irritation and resentment, annoyed by the beauty of the newcomers. I seriously can't stand those 2 women, she sneered. Those 2 round lumps of theirs. Laura said smugly, using her hands to lift and squeeze the fake breasts inside her bra, the one hidden beneath her Sailor Moon outfit, showing them off proudly to Lorie. Yours are prettier, trust me, she said. The 3 female ghosts burst into laughter, clearly amused. All the while, the 2 women staying in the rental room had no idea at all that they were being watched by spirits throughout the entire night. That night passed without incident, because the 3 ghosts still didn't do anything to the 2 new women. The next morning, the 2 new women who had moved in came to tell the grandfather and grandmother that they had slept well. They said it was quiet and peaceful. The old couple smiled, feeling relieved at last. But when the second night came, that was when the 2 women got a taste of something far worse. Because that night, the ghostly women Laura, Lorie, and Jenny finally made their move and went after them. Jenny's ghost appeared before the 2 women, wearing a chongkraebon and a shawl, the same outfit she used to wear when selling food at the market. Jenny's ghost began to move, flowing into a graceful, swirling dance, so mesmerizing that the 2 women stood frozen, eyes wide open. Then Laura and Lorie's ghosts rushed back and forth, wearing their Sailor Moon outfit and Japanese schoolgirl uniform. The two ghosts darted past the women, again and again, right in front of their faces, while Laura laughed loudly, clearly enjoying every moment. But the two women were so terrified that they completely lost control and wet themselves. They screamed at the top of their lungs and ran straight out of the rental room. When the grandfather and grandmother saw the two women shrieking and rushing out in a panic, they quickly asked what had happened. As soon as the two women said that they had been haunted by ghosts, the old couple exchanged worried looks, their faces filled with anxiety. "I knew it. I knew those damn ghosts would pull something like this," the old man muttered angrily. The next day, the two women, looking utterly miserable after being tormented by the three ghosts, carried their bags and dragged their suitcases. As they walked out of the alley where the old couple lived, the grandfather and grandmother watched them leave, their eyes following them sadly. They slowly sat down, exhausted, thinking to themselves that there would surely be no more tenants willing to rent the rooms ever again. But not long after that, a handsome young male student, around 20-something years old, came to ask about renting a room. The old couple were overjoyed. They immediately worked together, sweeping, cleaning, and making the room spotless once again. They firmly assured him that the rental room was comfortable, quiet, and peaceful. When the young man handed the rent money to the grandmother, her face lit up with a wide smile, and she accepted the money immediately. As the two of them walked out of the rental room together, his grandmother turned back and made an okay gesture to the grandfather. The old man smiled back. Both of them then walked into the house, feeling genuinely happy. And that night, the three flirtatious ghost girls were absolutely thrilled beyond words, because the person who rented the room was a young man. And on top of that, he was very handsome. The three female ghosts secretly watched as the young man stepped out of the bathroom, wearing nothing but a single towel wrapped around his body. Laura's and Lorie's ghosts were practically drooling at the sight. As for Jenny's ghost, she raised a hand to her chest, eyes wide, the moment she saw the young man's physique. The three ghosts, in their Sailor Moon outfit, Japanese schoolgirl uniform, and traditional Thai shawl and chankraban, all twisted their bodies shyly, squirming back and forth in embarrassment and excitement. So caught up in their delight at seeing such a handsome man, the three ghosts completely lost themselves, and before they realized it, they accidentally revealed their presence. This made the young man, standing in front of the mirror with only a towel on, nearly bulge his eyes out when he saw the three ghosts standing behind him. The moment the three ghosts realized what had happened, they quickly tried to hide themselves, so the young man wouldn't see them. When he turned to look around, there was no one there. He stood still for a moment, thinking, maybe my eyes are just playing tricks on me. Then he turned back to look at the mirror again. This time, the young man decided to bend forward and look through his legs. That was when he let out a piercing scream in sheer terror and ran full speed to kick the rental room door open. As he bolted outside in panic, the towel slipped loose and nearly fell off. The three ghosts' eyes nearly popped out of their sockets, and their noses practically exploded with nosebleeds as they watched the young man running around in nothing but his underwear. The next morning, the young man packed his bags and walked out of the old couple's alley, leaving the grandfather and grandmother standing there, watching him go with deep regret. 2 months passed after that, and no one ever came to rent the rooms of the old couple again. But in the 3rd month, a young man finally appeared. He was dressed plainly, almost old-fashioned, with a cloth shoulder bag slung across his body. He walked in and asked to rent a room from the grandfather and grandmother. He said his name was Lamb, and that he was looking for a quiet place to stay and rest for a while. The grandmother was delighted. She immediately invited him inside to take a look at the rental room, and that night, while he was sleeping on the bed, wearing nothing but a single pair of underwear, the 3 flirtatious ghosts slowly crept in and stood in a line around the bed. "Oh my goodness," one of them whispered. "Lamb really lives up to his name. This one is reserved by me. You two stay out of it. How is that fair? We have to share." Another one snapped back, "A lamb like this? We have to enjoy all of him." And so they kept arguing back and forth, bickering endlessly in the darkness. And just as Laura's ghost lunged forward, like a tiger pouncing on its prey, the three of them suddenly let out piercing screams. They had been struck by a magical whip, because Lamb was a man from the countryside, and he knew occult art. He already sensed that this rental room was haunted. The young man decided that he would deal with them, so they wouldn't come back to disturb him again. After all, he was starting to grow fond of this room, with its quiet and peaceful atmosphere. He lashed the three ghosts again. All of them cried out in agony, wailing and begging at the same time. "Ow, husband, please," one of them cried dramatically. "Why would you hit your own wife?" One of the sharp-tongued ghost girls blurted it out shamelessly. "Who the hell is your husband?" the young man shouted. "Take this and this. Get the hell out of this room." The wailing screams of the three ghosts echoed loudly, so loud that the grandfather and grandmother could hear them clearly. Both of them rushed out and ran to knock on the rental room door. When Lamb opened the door, the old couple froze, hands flying to their chests in shock. Right in front of them, the three flirtatious ghosts were tightly bound with enchanted ropes, crying and whining pitifully, their sobbing so loud it was unbearable. "If you dare keep haunting this room," Lamb warned coldly, "you'll be in serious trouble. Your spirits won't even get the chance to be reborn." The three flirtatious ghosts panicked in terror and hurriedly raised their hands, bowing again and again in a Y. The grandfather and grandmother quickly stepped in to plead, begging Lamb not to harm the three ghosts any further. They gently urged the spirits to move on and be reborn before it became too late. In the end, Laura, Lorie, and Jenny finally agreed to leave the rental room. The forms of the three ghosts slowly grew faint, their bodies fading, gradually disappearing into nothingness. But just before vanishing completely, sharp-tongued Laura couldn't resist one last remark. "I'll go first then, okay, husband?" Crack! The sharp sound of Lamb's enchanted whip echoed loudly throughout the room. The three ghosts, their forms already fading and nearly gone, let out simultaneous shrill screams, "Equa!" And together, they cried out in unison, "What a cruel man!" After that, they vanished completely. Once the three flirtatious ghosts finally agreed to move on and be reborn, the rental room was no longer haunted. Lamb continued living there without any trouble, kept earning steady income from renting the room to him, peacefully ever after.
Drawn by BikiBaam. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, so you won't miss any of our new creative clips. Support our art journey with a super thanks. See you again in the next clip. Coming soon.